Welcome to the very first episode of In Other Words, a podcast segment dedicated to shining light on translators, the voices behind the voices who bring stories from one language to another and open up new worlds for readers everywhere. Behind every great book that crosses our languages, there is a translator crafting each sentence with care. In other words, celebrates these literary bridge builders. Each episode, we will be talking to a translator about their journey, their process, and celebrate the love for the written word. I'm thrilled to have our inaugural guest, Varsha Tiwary, a gifted writer and a translator based in Delhi. She recently translated the Hindi novel Rambhakt Rangbaz into English as 1990 Aramganj, published by Westland. She's also a fellow at the Himalayan Writing Retreat 2025, supporting emerging writers. Today, we are exploring the fascinating world where reading, writing, and translating meet. Varsha, your work and insights into this continuum promise to inspire us all, whether we are writers, readers, or somewhere in between. Welcome to the show, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Namrata. It's always a joy to talk to you. I've been the earliest contributors, the earliest published writings of mine have been published in Kitab. And it's always a pleasure to find an editor and a reader and a mentor, I should say, who encourages new writers, new writings, and is always open and kind. And it's such a pleasure to be here and to be talking to you about things which are so close to my heart. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Varsha, for your kind words. Moving on to our first question, let's start by diving into your journey. What initially drew you to the world of translation?
The desire to communicate. When I read a book, I just want to tell my friends about it. That is how I get into reviewing the books or talking about them. And when I read a Hindi book and I want to share it with my non-Hindi speaking friends, the only way that I could figure out was trying to translate. And that's how my initial, very, very unmeditated and casual steps towards translation began, because I used to feel that if I know the two languages, I can translate them. And as I started translating, I found that it is not so simple. But the joy of taking these, initial foolhardy steps is that you get an idea of how complicated this business of language is. It sharpens your awareness about things, and then you become humble. And I think that is very important, to be humble when you approach a text. And I think this is the first lesson that translation teaches you.
Very beautifully said. So let's go into the process of translation. How does a translator balance fidelity to the original text with the cultural and linguistic nuances of the target language?
You begin by not doing any of that. You begin by being foolhardy. You begin by being arrogant and thinking that just taking a dictionary or a thesaurus and transplanting meanings word by word is okay. And then that horrible wooden stupid draft you read in English, whatever you have put it down, and then you realize that fidelity is not force. You can, tape together the meanings of words, but it will not transmit meaning. And then you realize that translation is writing, and it requires a lot of creativity and imagination. And sometimes, even when you try very hard, you cannot really transmit the full force of one language to another. And then it makes you aware of the unknowability of Hindi, you know, like I would like to talk to you in through examples, because otherwise these become just phrases. For example, if there's a story by Fanishwarnath Renu called Raspriya. So usme there is a phrase in about the character who is Pachkodi Mridangiya. He beats the mridang, and he's 40 years old and he's already an old man. So when the village people see him, they say, Pachkodiya, tum जी रहे हो या थिथरिया रहे हो? Ab, if you try to translate कि पचकोड़िया तुम जी रहे हो कि थेथरी कर रहे हो, थेथरिया रहे हो, you cannot, you know. So you know that Hindi will be Hindi. It will resist translation, and your English will have to expand, will have to, disintegrate, and in trying to accommodate that meaning. So the more you start going into, line by line, word by word, you're trying to transfer the force of Hindi into English to entirely different languages, you become very humble. And you know that full fidelity is not possible. You are just trying to recreate the feeling and the force in another language. And that makes you very aware of the sentence structures in English, about, the fine attention to grammar that needs to be paid to make that sentence alive. And I think that is the biggest reward of translation. If you love words and you don't translate, you will not be able to go deep to the extent that an experience of translation will provide. And you don't actually have to translate a book length work or something. You can just play around with random stories, or which I do just to stimulate myself, because when I go into translation, I realize that translation is also curation. So you need to get permissions, you need to make book proposals, you need to sell the book, the author, you have to tell the publisher why publish this and all. So somehow it is also mentally exhausting. So sometimes when I don't want to do, just playing with words is the richest reward of translation. And it kind of changes your English, I would say. So your English, the kind you grew up learning in schools, is it comes apart, and then a new richer English, which is very aware of meanings and which is very aware of uh, uh, how to convey a very Indian reality in this language. That awareness, I think that translation has given me. I'm not saying that I'm at some very exalted place, but I am at a better place than I was when I was not translating.
That's a very deep and a meaningful journey that you have shared with us. So I'm very curious to know that, do you think a good translation can ever be completely invisible, or is there always a trace of the translator's voice?
I don't know, like in Ahmedabad, there were 20 plus students. And if we were translating the same two lines, every one of us was doing it in a different way. Abhi na jao chhod kar ke dil abhi bhara nahi. 22 people will do it in 22 different ways. So that itself gives the answer that, there cannot be uh, an absence of the translator, because there's no one perfect meaning. And when there's no one perfect meaning, that means every translator is leaving a trace of herself in that line, So we cannot say that the translator can be invisible completely.
So, in your experience, what's the translator's biggest responsibility? Loyalty to the text or making the story resonate in the new language?
I don't think that there is loyalty to a text because loyalty is the correct word, I would say. There is a force of the text. There's a force in the native language in whichever it is written, and you have to recreate that force in English. No, so if you want to say थेथरिया रहे हो, आपको अंग्रेजी में आप उसको ट्रांसलेट नहीं कर सकते, आपको अंग्रेजी में उसका फोर्स रिक्रिएट करना है. So you cannot be loyal because there's no, like, ऐसा तो है नहीं कि there's a tracing paper, you are keeping it on the Hindi text and then you are putting the words of English on it. So there cannot be loyalty. There has to be a recreation of the force, which is an imaginative and creative enterprise. And you are loyal to the extent your creativity captures that force. So, like I was reading about all those Asterix comics, which have been translated from French to English, and all those names and that have been translated as, calculatrix and those funny names. They are translations. They are not there in the original, but to capture the the pun involved or hat tip to the nature of that person, they have been put like that in English. So translation, as long as it is recreating that force, it is loyal, and it is not like one-to-one correspondence, or it is not possible. Yeah.
How important is it for a translator to understand the historical, political, and the cultural background of the original text?
Because I'm translating from Hindi, I have an innate awareness. So I don't know if I am very qualified to answer that, because if I was writing about something very obscure, then of course you have to make yourself aware, because there are a lot of places where the Hindi text is self-explanatory, but when you put it in English, you have to give a little bit of context. And to give that context, like even for the book that I was translating, 1990 Aramganj, I, although all this is known to me, I literally went through a lot of news reels and videos of the Rath Yatra to know how the Rath was made and how the entrance gateways were decorated and how Advani looked, and all those things. So you have to know, you have to be aware. That awareness may be naturally there in you, but if it is not, then you have to kind of know the socio-cultural and political nuances. Yeah.
And I think somewhere it's also got to do with that Hindi has, as a language, has also undergone changes. Like there is one which is Prachin Hindi, in which perhaps Premchand and the original Hindi writers of the 50s and at that time wrote. And then there is something called the Nai Wali Hindi, where you have the latest new novels in Hindi which come out, which are more lighter to read, in case if you were to look at some younger age groups. And also perhaps that language also, that change in the language is also something that translators need to consider when working on translations or picking up books or choosing which language to use.
What kind of Hindi you enjoy? Like, I don't enjoy very tatsam heavy Hindi, like, in which, for example, plays based on Mahabharata are written, Hey Vats, and
Yeah.
gaze and very Sanskritized Hindi. That is not the kind of Hindi I enjoy. I enjoy a Hindi in which there are a lot of colloquial infusions. The Nai wali Hindi will also have ample number of English words, which is reflecting the recent years where a lot of English words are now a part of Hindi. Even anyone walking on the street knows these words. So it's a more it's not contrived. It is a reflection of the reality of the current time. So yeah, you should, if you enjoy a very Sanskritized Hindi, only then you should take up a Jai Shankar Prasad translation or something. Otherwise, you will not enjoy. And I think enjoyment of the original text is the key to a great translation.
So you've always mentioned that you see reading, writing, and translating as a continuum. So can you expand on how this shapes your approach to each, be it as a reviewer, reader, writer, or a translator?
Yeah, so I think reading and translation are very intimately linked, because when you read a book and you love it deeply, you start translating it. And when you translate, you have to write. And like I told you, when you uh, translate, initially you may think that it is not a creative enterprise, but very soon you are kind of dissuaded of that notion. The only thing in which translation and creative writing differ are that you don't have to make a plot.
Okay.
Where it's like a game in which you're playing with sentences, you're playing with structure, your grammar, but you already have a sequence given to you. This is happening in the Hindi text. The sentences are also laid out, but now those sentences, the force of those sentences have to be recreated in English. So it's like some kind of a riyaz, I feel. But as you do it over the length of a book, you read in a way you have never read before. You read it even more deeply than perhaps the person who wrote it, because that person was in a creative flow, the one who wrote it. He was just transcribing his whatever, he was carried away. But now, because you have to recreate, you are reading it with the analytical mindset also, and you are understanding the structure. You are somehow kind of channelizing that author into you. And therefore, even though you are ostensibly only recreating the sentences in another language, your awareness of structure, of plotting, of how curiosity is built up, and how it is dissipated. Sometimes you yourself, while translating, will start crying. So the force, the how the author is doing things, that is internalized in you. So I don't think I haven't taken many creative writing classes, but I feel that translation is a creative writing class, in the sense that translation is writing, and writing is also translation, because when I am writing a story, I am recreating a Hindi, a reality which is taking place in an Indian language. And to recreate that in English, I need to have a different kind of English at my disposal. And translation has given me that.
True.
So for me, I don't see any difference. Like even in book reviews, I kind of bring my awareness of, the structuring and sentences, and that, because that is my appreciation of the text. So my appreciation of a text is also very personal, because what feelings that text is evoking in it comes from its grammar, from its sentences, from the way the text kind of grabs you. So that is how I kind of fell in reviewing books. Yeah, that's.
I relate to when you say that because I have been a writer, but before everything else, I was a reviewer, and more than anything else, I was a reader. So that's where it perhaps you are right, it comes from there. Because as you rightly said, writing is a very solitary experience, but translating is not, because you are actually working with the author. Maybe if they are living, then the original author consciously or subconsciously if they are not alive. So what role do you think does this collaboration play in shaping a translation? Because I remember you sharing in one of the interviews that I took before that you had worked very actively with the original writer of 1990 Aramganj, and he was very much involved in the entire process of the book. So how do you think does this shape your translation, the work, the final work?
Yeah, because I was an absolute newbie, huh? So, and all I had to offer was my enthusiasm and appreciation of the text. I had nothing else to give to the author except that I will translate and send it to you. So I was sending it, and he was reading it, and he was telling me, and it was a very horrible translation initially, very wooden. So he would tell, no, this is, he would say, बहुत जकड़ा है वर्षा जी, उसमें मजा नहीं आ रहा है पढ़ के. So this is how we went. But I think having this back and forth was very important to sustain me in the process. That lasted a few months, because otherwise I would lose heart, as I always do in creative writing. I stay with a story for some time and then I lose heart. Oh, this is not happening. This structure is just not coming through. So let me put it aside. And my laptop is full of these unfinished stories. So, yeah, I think that the back and forth kind of, keeps you on track, and it helps you to go on. So you know that even if you're not perfect, you're on the way and you're making a little progress. Yeah.
And of course, so publishers and editors, how do they influence the final outcome of a translated work?
Publishers and editors, it depends upon the publishers and editors.
Okay.
But yeah, you need a publisher, and I was quite grateful to Westland that they took a first time translator up and kind of yeah gave me the platform. Yeah. But who your editor is, if you have a great editor who's like a pair of second eyes, your text will shine. It is a real blessing. It is a real blessing to have a good editor. Yeah.
That's nice to know. So in your opinion, do you think a translation can ever truly capture the essence of the original work? Or is some meaning inevitably lost or perhaps gained? Because as we just spoke that, you cannot hold on to a specific word or some very local phrases that are used because there is nothing equivalent to that for that in English. Whatever Indian languages you take, we have a lot of colloquial quotes and phrases that we use in day-to-day languages. So do you think that we lose, or do you think we gain in that translation process?
I have a this thing that the human civilization itself developed because people wanted to communicate and they did not understand. They began translating incorrectly, partially, and theorist Homi K. Bhabha, who has written a whole theory which he says that translation is a metaphor for civilization. So the way when two people or two groups of people who do not understand each other at all, they encounter each other. For example, in Renu's books, Mela Anchal, for example, you'll find these villages and the British officers. They're interacting for the first time. They don't understand each other, but the villagers create their own English idiom. So that is also translation. So I think this thing that translation completely captures captures or does not capture, it comes from a place where we fail to understand that all translation is interpretation, and interpretation has always been happening. Without interpretation, human beings cannot understand. Whenever human beings try to understand another culture, another language, they will interpret and it will not be complete. So even in our journey, I think if we at some level keep this in our mind, we'll feel less anxious about translation, because I find that a lot of youngsters, they get very worked up. This meaning is not coming. Even I would also get very worked up. But if we kind of tell ourselves that it is only an interpretation, and we attended Arunava's class, and he said that translation is the art of failure. So you have to know that you're going to fail. You cannot 100% capture every nuance. It is just an interpretation, and every translation, like Bible, keeps on getting updated. Every translation can be made more contemporary.
Right.
So all these things mean that every translation is an attempt to know better, know deeper. To what extent it is successful at a particular point of time, that's a test of its quality. But let's not, like Kabir, there is a Linda Hess translation, there's an Arvind Krishna Malhotra translation, and now I think there is some other translation which is doing the rounds. So it's just a journey, everyone. And the best part is that everyone who translates the same text can derive a different kind of joy from it. So yeah.
So, can you share your thoughts on the growing interest in academic and professional courses on translations in India in the recent years? And what opportunities do you think these courses will open up for students academically, professionally, and culturally?
I think these courses are very good in the way that they bring the best known names in translation to come and talk to you, in the way they provide a very structured environment for you to become familiar with the theory, especially for people who are not from a literary background, who don't have literature degrees. These courses are a bottle of all the theory, the criticism, the literary critique stances that theorists have taken over the year, which otherwise intimidate you when you come across them. So it is good. And when you have people like Arunava or Daisy or Arvind Krishna Malhotra coming and talking to you, it kind of does something to your brain. To what extent you translate actually after that is up to you, up to the kind of commitments, the headspace you are in. But I think they are a good exposure. If nothing else, they would increase your awareness, to what this beast called translation is. And kind of, if you have any fear, it would dispel those fears. Yeah.
True. So, a couple of years ago, I remember during the pandemic, especially, I had attended a session, and it was there was an Urdu writer who had passed away like in 70s or 80s, and the family had now made a trust, and they were now trying to bring the books into mainstream. So we had some very interesting people there, including Manto's great grandniece, who translates some of his works and all. So one point which they made was something that stuck in my mind, and I want to ask you about that, is that they said that, for Manto, for Ismat Chugtai, the entire literary community, including international and India, Pakistan, all came together to make them the name they are today. So if today everybody is talking about Manto's work or everybody knows his work, is because we all came together to make that happen. Be it readers, be it translators, be it publishers, be it literary communities, be it everyone. So they were like, we need to do this for more authors. We need to be open to read maybe lesser known authors and to pick them up and to maybe make them the next month, or maybe they're just waiting to be discovered. So it's not that languages don't have writers. They have got very good writers, but they're just waiting to be discovered on that international platform. So what are your thoughts on this? Do you think that awards like maybe the Booker wins that have come towards Indian literature, or even the translation prize, the JCP translation prize, what role does it play? Do you think it completely changes the narrative on international platforms for translations, for languages, for the author? Where do you think does this make a space?
I think it certainly creates a space, because once author gets translated and is read in the hegemonic language, which is English, the recognition is worldwide. So it makes a difference, but whether it actually translates into more people reading the books in the original language, I don't know. Because when you talk to young translators and you ask them what they're reading, they are still reading the known greats. They are reading Premchand, or they want to translate the known greats, or they ask which great writer I should translate it. But I think that when you read widely, the awareness that a writer is great should come from text, not from someone else's recommendation. So the text itself would leap out to you. And that is very important, because to carry on translating a book length work, to make it mukammal, you have to stay with it for some period of time, which could be a couple of years till it sees the light of day. So if you don't love it, and if you don't believe that this needs to come out in English, you will get exhausted. So you have to read the text. The text should grab you. Only then you should take up translation. Otherwise, this cycle. So I don't know, because when I see so many people graduating but not taking up full length works as in translation, I feel that it could be, this thing that now I'm a qualified translator. Give me a text and I will translate it. But this is now not how it works, because because you are a qualified translator, anybody can give you a manual to run a washing machine to translate. But would it kind of make you leap? I had some people offer me non-fiction projects, but they didn't touch me or move me, or so I couldn't stay with them even for 15 days. So how can you stay with them for as long as it takes to make a book? So I don't know whether awards can generate that kind of love, because that kind of love has to come from within the translator. And whether awards make people read more Hindi books or Kannada books or Tamil or Malayalam books, I don't know, because I feel that Tamil, Malayalam, Kannada, and even Hindi books have their dedicated readerships, but these are existing in silos. The Hindi readers and the English readers don't interact. The Hindi authors and the English authors don't interact in our country. And in that scenario, the translator has this role of being the interlocutor. Even the English publisher does not interact directly with the Hindi author. So all these silos are there, and a lot of translation or translators' energy is expended on making communications possible. So I don't know how far awards, maybe some very high profile translator author duos like Daisy and Gitanjali, or Srinath Perur and Vivek Shanbag. In their case, they may not be these kind of silos, but by and large in Hindi world, I do see these silos. Yeah.
So Do you feel that these translations are helping bridge regional language divides in India, or are there still gaps that need to be filled?
I love Malayalam literature. I love Kannada books. How do I love them? Because I have read them in translation. Yeah, so I think, and as a kid, I had read all the Bengali greats in Hindi translation. I think Bengali was is the most widely translated into Hindi language. So even in the 80s and 90s, almost every Bangla author is in Hindi translation. So I know it only from translation. Yeah.
True. I told this to Arunava when I'd met him for the first time, that I actually learned my mother tongue through translation. So my father lived outside the state and we never went there very often. We like once in 5 years or something. And I could not read, I could not write. And I learned that language also at 14. It's not something I'm very proud of, but then when I saw translated literature of Arunava from Bengali, and I saw that, I can make out some phrases, I could understand a lot about the culture. That's when I thought I need to pick up a Telugu translation now. I need to do that to feel that, and that's how I went back. Now I can read, I can write, I can now understand it at a more deeper level. So yes, I understand that translated literature does help in many ways. It can also, like I learned Urdu 2 years back because I wanted to read Manto in his original works. So it was just an interest that I wanted to do that. I want to read there because I somehow feel that there are many people who've told that Manto needs to be enjoyed the most in his original language rather than English. So yeah, I agree with that.
Books they are in Hindi script. So you can read the Urdu sentences in Hindi script. So that is
Yeah. My
also.
my teacher who taught us Urdu had actually recommended those kind of books. So she's like, Urdu is a very interesting language, like because of those the signs which are there. Sometimes they are not there in the print, so it's very open to interpretation kind of a thing. Yeah, so that's why
I
she insisted on these books.
did you do that Akshita's
Yeah,
classes?
yeah. I learned from
I
Akshita.
also did that, but then I didn't carry it to the higher level. So I am not very confident of my ability to read a full text, but I can read the road signs and, random
Yeah.
kulfi wala and stuff like that.
I'm still work in progress, but yeah, I feel good about it that I can read now. So I got a lot of workbooks and all. There is a local market here where you get a lot of workbooks. वो छोटे बच्चों को सिखाते हैं ना, where you can literally trace on that dotted
I have
thing.
got
And
those. Yeah.
so I did that, and then I got this where they write in Urdu, then they write in English, then they write in Urdu English where they tell you how to pronounce that word. So that actually helped me a lot.
Yeah. I got those Gopi Chand Narang's workbooks.
Ha.
So they're very good. Yeah.
So with the rise of AI and machine translation, Varsha, where do you think does the future lie for human translators in literary work?
Because I am not, very well versed in using AI, but very simple sentences, the kind that are put on Twitter, and I have seen those being translated. They capture the mota meaning. So I think that for non-literary texts, we should take it as a given that AI will a simple text. But AI is a beast that is consuming the literature translated by others and then making it its own. And it is reconfiguring its knowledge all the time at a pace faster than human beings ever can. So I really don't know what the future holds. But what I feel is that regardless of uh, what AI can do for a text, the joy that I get from translating something, that AI cannot take. So if I want to use translation as a thing that would expand my relationship to language, which would deepen my appreciation of the nuances of meaning, and improve my creative writing, AI cannot interfere with all of that. So I'm like, I would say that it's my privilege to think like that. But of course, for people who are dependent on translation as a way to pay their bills, for them, it's a thing of concern. I would say that, you know. So as of now, publishers still want literary translators. And Booker has been given to a literary translator. So uh, I think we are safe for now, but I don't know what the future holds. Uh, and I speak from a position of privilege that, I would still derive pleasure in translation. But for people for whom it's a means of paying bills, maybe they need to worry. I don't know. AI is an unpredictable kind of beast. It's creating art, it's creating cartoons. So it will also, somewhere I had read that at time when AI can also write, so AI can do creative writing, it can do translation, it can make art,
It can edit.
it can edit. तो editors की तो कोई जरूरत नहीं है. But one thing that AI cannot do is, if AI can do everything, then who is going to read all that AI is churning out, So in the future, there's an essay by Italo Calvino, which is called Cybernetics. And in which in the 1960s, he has predicted that when in a future when machines will be able to do everything, the only thing that would be left for human beings is to be a reader, because a machine would be able to churn all the text translations, everything, but only a human being would be able to read and be moved by that reading, and also to be able to tell whether the passage written by a machine moves him or a passage written by a human being moves. So I think as long as we are readers, we are safe.
Right, very true. Very nicely said. So, Varsha, the last few questions, which are on a very personal scale. So, do you have a wish list as a translator? Are there any books you wish you would have been translated or are yet to be translated, but you wish to be a part of them? Let's make this happen. You never know, universe is listening.
No, I don't. Like I get, enamored of writers, but I often find that they're already translated or they have already given their rights to someone. So I don't have a list as such, but I do have writers I love very much.
So
Yeah.
please share that.
So Srilal Shukla's stories, I love each one of them, but I think his son has already, given the rights to someone or something. They've not come in translation as yet, but someone must be doing it. So, yeah.
That's interesting.
So I feel that contemporary writers, we need to keep exploring them, and we may, find some new great writer. So that is a thing that we translators are constantly doing. Yeah.
True, true. So what are you working on next?
I'm translating stories, so random stories, but not a book length work as of now.
That's a very interesting exercise. So I have a friend who's also an aspiring translator. So she picks stories from my blog and she just messages me that, just give me the permission on email. I'm sending you an email. And it's so much fun to see that, what I'd written in English to be turned into
Yeah.
Hindi. And, that's a very interesting thing. She does it only on her blogs. So it's not that she publishes it somewhere. She says it helps me understand the nuances of the language. And for me to think, it's a very interesting exercise to go.
Absolutely. This is what I keep telling. This is what it is about.
Yeah.
Publishing and all these are things which happen by fate, or sometimes even for very good books they don't happen.
Yeah.
So the real rewards lie here. Yeah.
True, very true, and very beautifully said. So we come to the last question. Finally, What's that one piece of advice you would like to give to someone who's just starting out as a translator?
Read, read, read. Read new authors, fall in love with them, and have a text move you so much that you would be able to stand by through the long, arduous journey to, make it into a book.
I'll keep that in mind. So thank you so much for sharing your insights, Varsha. I love how you see translation as an act everyone can try. It's a way to connect with language, place, and story. Thank you, everyone, for tuning into In Other Words, a space where we spotlight translators, the voices behind the voices. We hope to see you soon in another exciting episode with another translator soon. Thank you.